and welcome to episode 61 of Toke Signals TV, where we bring you the biggest in cannabis and hemp news stories every week. I'm Steve Elliott, the editor at tokesignals.com, and I'll be guiding you through the news. First, let's look at our Toke Signals Bud Pick of the Week. This is from a secret garden somewhere in Washington State. And the ladies in the foreground here are White Widow. This is from a mixed strain garden, but White Widow is to the forefront here. And they are growing under metal halide, about 3 weeks into flower, as you can see. Let's do the news now, shall we? In the United States this week, advocates launched a Vote Medical Marijuana drive ahead of the November elections. The medical marijuana advocacy group Americans for Safe Access has produced a new 30-second online TV advertisement to launch its groundbreaking election cycle voter education campaign, Vote Medical Marijuana. This ad will also air on cable news programs in Detroit, Philadelphia, South Florida, and Washington State, in addition to the YouTube version. The campaign features an interactive online voter's guide at votemedicalmarijuana.org that provides information on political candidate positions as well as voting statistics, and a report card for each member of Congress and certain state elected officials. We want to better educate supporters and the general public about casting their ballot for candidates who have their best interests in mind, said ASA Executive Director Steph Scherer. Our elected representatives in Congress and in state legislatures are making policy decisions on medical marijuana that affect millions of patients in the U.S. ASA has sent out more than 2,000 surveys to gather information on candidates' positions on medical marijuana so patients and the general public can make more informed electoral decisions. The Vote Medical Marijuana campaign will focus on as many as all 435 U.S. House races, 36 U.S. Senate races, 36 gubernatorial races, and 31 state attorney general races, as well as more than 360 state legislative races in California, Florida, and Washington. In D.C. this week, the marijuana legalization initiative there has received major labor endorsements. The Service Employees International Union, United Commercial Food Workers, and D.C. Working Families on Tuesday endorsed Initiative 71, D.C.'s marijuana legalization initiative. 71, which is on the November 4th ballot, would legalize the possession of up to 2 ounces of marijuana for adults over 21 and allows individuals to grow up to 6 plants in their homes. D.C. laws prevent this ballot initiative from addressing the taxation and sale of marijuana. However, the D.C. Council is currently considering a bill which would account for such provisions. These major labor endorsements show that the elimination of marijuana prohibition is an issue of significant importance to workers in the District of Columbia, according to Dr. Malik Burnett, D.C. Policy Manager for the Drug Policy Alliance. Initiative 71 would eliminate unduly harsh punishments for minor offenses, making it less likely that our young people get a lifelong criminal record that makes it harder to get a job, an apartment, or credit card, according to Dr. Burnett. The possession of 1 ounce of marijuana is currently decriminalized in the District of Columbia, and persons found with more than this amount or under this amount face only a $25 civil infraction. Data from the Metropolitan Police Department reveals that 77% of tickets written during decrim have been in communities of color. The war on drugs has had a devastating impact on the ability of working families in the district to advance their economic standing, said Delvone Michael, Executive Director for D.C. Working Families. A progressive policy like Initiative 71, which removes marijuana from the criminal justice system, would serve as yet another step towards ending this failed policy in the District of Columbia. In Australia, we have medical marijuana set for a national clinical trial. Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott's government has thrown its support behind a clinical trial of medical marijuana, with New South Wales Premier Mike Baird revealing that a deal was struck at last Friday's Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. NSW will lead the collaborative national trial with the support of the Commonwealth and other states and territories. The health ministers discussed medicinal cannabis at their meeting, but underlined their continued opposition to the recreational use and legalization of marijuana, claiming it is linked to mental illness. Premier Baird last month announced that the NSW government had formed a working group to set up the clinical trial, due to report back at the end of this year. NSW working group is already driving this reform, and we welcome the support of the Commonwealth and the states and territories for the conduct of the trial, Baird said. NSW is playing a leadership role, but our historic agreement to work collaboratively on this significant issue means we have a far greater chance of success, Baird said. A nationwide poll released in July found that 2/3 of Australians, 66%, support the legalization of cannabis for medicinal purposes. In Canada this week, their Centre for Addiction and Mental Health recommended marijuana legalization. Canada's CAMH has released a new evidence-informed report on cannabis control. The Cannabis Policy Framework, released by the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, recommends that marijuana legalization be instituted with a strict regulation approach to cannabis control. Now, Canada has one of the highest rates of cannabis use in the world, with 40% of Canadians having used it at least once in their lives. CAMH's Cannabis Policy Framework was developed to provide evidence-based principles for reducing cannabis-related harm, according to the organization. To do this, CAMH scientists and policy experts conducted in-depth analysis of the health, social, and legal implications of cannabis use and examined cannabis policy in other jurisdictions. Canada's current system of cannabis control is failing to prevent or reduce the harms associated with cannabis use, according to Dr. Jürgen Rehm, Director of the Social and Epidemiological Research Department at CAMH. Based on a thorough review of the evidence, we believe that legalization combined with strict regulation of cannabis is the most effective means of reducing the harms associated with its use, Dr. Rehm said. While 10% of Canadians have used cannabis in the past year, it is not a benign substance, Dr. Rehm claimed. Cannabis use is associated with a variety of health harms like problems with cognitive and psychomotor functioning, respiratory issues, cannabis dependence, and mental illness, he claimed. For this reason, any reform of Canada's system of cannabis control must include a strong focus on prevention and a range of interventions aimed at groups that are at a higher risk of harm, including youth and people with a personal or family history of mental illness. Dr. Rehm also said that the evidence examined indicates that the criminalization of cannabis does not deter people from using it. Instead, criminalization drives cannabis users away from prevention, risk reduction, and treatment services. Canadians obtaining cannabis in criminal markets know little about the potency or quality of the products they purchase, according to Dr. Rehm. They are also exposed to criminality and other drugs and run the risk of a criminal record. Enforcement of Canada's cannabis laws costs Canadians $1.2 billion per year. The emphasis on public health-focused regulation sets CAMH's recommendation apart from other legalization approaches recently enacted in the United States and elsewhere. In contrast to other models of legalization, we are suggesting a much more controlled system, said Dr. Rehm. Legalization of cannabis must be governed by strict regulations that ensure it is not sold like other commodities, Dr. Rehm said. This would include a government monopoly on sales, limits on availability, a pricing system that discourages use of higher harm products, and a ban on marketing. In Canada, cannabis use is most common among adolescents and young adults. In Ontario, past year use is estimated at 23% for students in grades 7 to 12 and 40% for 18 to 29-year-olds. My experience is that youth perceive cannabis as being natural and therefore not harmful, said Dr. Joanna Henderson, clinical psychologist and head of research in the Child, Youth, and Family Program at CAMH. But we know, she said, that cannabis use has been linked to changes in cognitive functioning and that it can be particularly harmful for youth, she claimed. Throughout adolescence, the brain is changing and developing, according to Dr. Henderson. Research, she said, shows that high levels of cannabis consumption can interfere with healthy development and are also connected with mental health problems in the youth, she claimed. Our approach to cannabis control must take into consideration the impact on youth, adolescent development, and the importance of prevention. Legalization with regulation of cannabis presents governments with an opportunity to mitigate harms to youth and to promote a public health approach geared to prevention and education, according to Dr. Rehm. We've known for a long time that the existing approach to cannabis policy is not working, Dr. Rehm said. We want this framework to add an informed discussion about the future of cannabis policy and to serve as a guide to the factors that need to be considered in order to come to a solution that is the most beneficial for public health. We believe that the best solution is a system of legalization combined with strict regulation of cannabis, Dr. Raim said. In California this week, a Los Angeles alcohol delivery service called Nest Drop is expanding into medical marijuana. Nest Drop is quite popular in Los Angeles for its alcohol delivery service, and now it's introducing what it calls the country's first in-app, on-demand medical marijuana delivery service for both iOS and Android. Available today for alcohol deliveries for LA area residents, Nest Drop medical marijuana delivery service will launch in the next few weeks in that same app. Medical marijuana patients will be required to upload a photo of their doctor's recommendation to Nest Drop's securely encrypted vault to receive approval before ordering. Unlike other medical marijuana delivery services online, Nest Drop says it is the first to provide an entirely in-app marketplace experience. After our initial success with alcohol deliveries, we decided to expand when we saw how this platform could be used to bring difficult-to-obtain products to people who really need them, said Nest Drop co-founder Michael Peischer. We began talking to patients and found a genuine need out there for improved access to this medicine. As part of the registration process, medical marijuana patients must upload a photo of a doctor's recommendation and medical marijuana identification card to order from Nest Drop's medical marijuana section. Once manually approved by a local dispensary, which can take as little as 5 minutes, according to the company, patients will have full access to the same medicine they're used to getting in person for the same donation amount. To further aid the patient's digital experience, Nest Drop worked with local doctors to categorize the available medicine based on the relief it provides. There are various symptoms patients can choose from, including nausea, insomnia, pain, anxiety, and spasms. Available medicine is dependent upon the supply of local dispensaries and will come in the choice of CBD, bud, edible, and concentrate. In order to reduce delivery wait times, Nest Drop has partnered with multiple dispensaries and liquor stores to serve the Los Angeles area. Nest Drop currently serves Los Angeles residents as far west and south as Marina del Rey, east to Silver Lake, and north to Encino, with plans to expand throughout Southern California and eventually beyond. Nest Drop says it's compliant with all of California's medical marijuana laws and takes security and age limits seriously. All orders are processed with the highest level of security using a 256-bit encrypted token. Anyone purchasing alcohol or medicinal marijuana must be of legal age, with proof of ID required at delivery. We intentionally chose this highly regulated industry because Nest Drop is committed to providing safe and legal access to medicinal marijuana for those who truly need it, Peischer said. Suffering patients are often less mobile and can be restricted by their ailments or are even uncomfortable visiting a dispensary. We believe this app structure and delivery model, tested and proven through our experience with alcohol delivery, has the potential to have a huge impact on the quality of life for patients here in Los Angeles, Peischer said. Available since June as an alcohol delivery app, Nest Drop features Los Angeles' largest selection of beer, wine, and spirits at competitive prices, according to the company. Users can order their favorite spirit and it will be delivered in an hour or less. Nest Drop's alcohol and medical marijuana delivery services are available in the same app, but orders must be made separately, according to the company. You can get more details at nestdrop.com. In the United States this week, a company called Cannabis introduced new edible labels for cannabis products. It's not easy being green, at least if you're trying to remember exactly how much cannabis is in that infused edible product in your hand. Now a New York-based company is making that easier with an all-natural frosted label that goes directly on the product instead of just on the packaging. According to Cannabis CEO and founder Carolyn Sebos, her company invented the edible labels for cannabis cakes, cookies, brownies, and cupcakes. The labels are customizable and can feature logos, warning information, serving suggestions, and even a QR code. Putting a label on the product instead of just on a bag or wrap is the smart and responsible method of meeting child safety and packaging regulations, according to Sebos. An edible label enhances brand identity and customer loyalty, she said, and protects manufacturers and dispensary owners from potential liability when accidental or over-ingestion occurs when a product becomes separated from its packaging. People who would be at risk for accidental ingestion now have an extra level of protection with Cannabis, according to CVOS. Brands can achieve more immediate product identification, and dosage awareness can no longer be easily ignored. Just as importantly, if you've forgotten exactly what it is you're holding in your hand, Cannabis is there to remind and help you, CVOS said. Clearly, this lady understands the challenges facing medical marijuana patients and recreational users. Made with all natural ingredients, each Cannabis label is made to order for each state, brand, and provider with custom, full-color images and text. The Cannabis edible graphic can be customized to include THC levels, dosages, state-specific warnings, and brand logos, and can be applied to almost any edible infused product, according to the company. Manufacturers of infused edible products can get free design and sample kits. Qualified manufacturers may also request a larger sample kit to allow for experimentation or applying the edible label on their product line. Rather than receiving negative publicity that may lead to tighter regulations or serious liability, now manufacturers, distributors, and sellers of infused edibles can get great publicity as well as enhanced branding by applying a Cannabis today, CVOS said. In the United States this week, we got some great and long-awaited news. Former race car driver Randy Lanier is to be released from life in prison for marijuana. Federal marijuana prisoner Lanier is 60 years old now. He's a former race car driver, and he will be released from prison after serving 26 years of a life sentence at the high-security Federal Correction Complex of Coleman in Florida for a 1988 conviction on leading a marijuana drug ring. U.S. District Judge J. Phil Gilbert has granted a motion by the federal government to reduce Lanier's life sentence and has approved his pending release, reports AutoWeek.com. Earlier this year, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder Jr. endorsed a proposal to reduce sentencing for convicted drug dealers while seeking to eliminate mandatory minimum sentences for nonviolent drug offenders. He has served his time with dignity and respect, said Stephen Ross Johnson, lead attorney for Lanier since 2002. He has helped mentor young people in the prison system, according to Johnson. The brief order issued by Judge Gilbert gives no reason for the sentence reduction. In addition to his life sentence, Lanier was given an additional maximum of 40 years on a distribution charge and another 5 years on an IRS fraud charge. Lanier's release comes with heavy restrictions, including drug and alcohol tests, no consumption of alcohol or patronizing of establishments that sell it, no firearms, and no lines of credit without approval from his probation officer. His first 6 months out of prison will be spent in a halfway house. His supervised release probation will last 3 years. He must submit to 1 drug test within 15 days of his release from prison and to at least 2 drug tests thereafter. He could be tested up to once a week for a full year. Lanier's brilliant racing career was marked by high points like 18 open-wheel starts for Arcerio Racing and the Indy 500 Rookie of the Year title. Now 60, graying, and facing physical problems, including a bad hip, Lanier competed in the 1980s against racing legends like Mario Andretti and A.J. Foyt. He'll be able to drive again, at least on civilian streets, for the first time in more than a quarter century when he's released from the federal penitentiary in Florida. Randy has a high-pitched voice, a friend told Auto Week. When he's happy, it goes even higher. He was so happy, it was really high. Until we see each other again next week, stay lifted. See you then.